on Lifetime Television. Film Focus Nevis, Film Fashion and Local Talent. This Sunday at 6 p.m. at NEPAC, the Film Focus Nevis will present a screening of The Devil Wears Prada 2, accompanied by a showcase featuring two talented Nevis-based fashion designers, Esther Brooks of Greenhouse Productions and Nicole Rogers of Julian's Daughter. Forgive me. Fashion and film are closely connected. Every major film production has a costume department requiring designers, stylists, seamstresses, and other skilled professionals. Nevis already has talented people working in these areas. We also want to recognize Atisha Brown. She's a talented young Nevisian who has worked on several Nevis film productions and as an assistant in the wardrobe department, and most recently served as lead wardrobe on the latest production filmed on the island. Admission for this Sunday's event is only $20 for adults, $10 for children, and those under 12 are free. And so we invite everyone to show up and support. We encourage people to come out in particular to this event because you can win a round-trip airfare ticket between Nevis and the Virgin Islands, courtesy of Cape Air. In terms of international media coverage for film, Jack's Facts newsletter, a leading travel trade publication serving travel advisors, recently featured Nevis in its Caribbean and Bermuda section under the headline, Nevis sets the scene for Lifetime's first microdrama, Tides of Temptation. In addition, NY Trend recently issued a press release entitled, Nevis takes center stage as Lifetime launches its first microdrama. These features are significant because they demonstrate that Nevis is not simply providing a backdrop for productions. The island is becoming a part of the story around emerging developments in the entertainment industry. Now, this microdrama, if I'm understanding it correctly, was also filmed here. It's an initiative by Tay Diggs, and it involves apparently these films that you can enjoy on your mobile device. If you're like me, I see them pop up all the time when they give you part 1 and part 2, and they are quite addictive. Well, Nevis is now in the middle of that. And so this microdrama is called Tides of Temptation. It was actually done right here on the island of Nevis, and for that we are truly grateful. Let me continue with some highlights from tourism, just to indicate that we have continued in Nevis to get significant visibility. We were recently featured in Marie Claire, New York Trend, Yahoo Travel, Business Insider, and Caribbean Journal. Marie Claire recently placed Nevis in the international spotlight, describing the island as the Caribbean island beauty lovers need to know. The Caribbean island that beauty lovers need to know. I think that's quite significant. And this feature showcased Nevis as a premier beauty and wellness destination. We highlighted several local businesses: Four Seasons Resort Nevis, Wally Beach Resort, Phenomenal Wellness, Back to My Roots Batik, Native Radiance, and of course sites like Saddle Hill and our natural hot springs. What is interesting, members of the media, is that this publication reaches 4.7 million average monthly page views and 1.7 million average monthly users. So this exposure is significant. Caribbean Journal also recently spotlighted Pinny's Beach, showcasing its 4 miles of coastline as one of Nevis's most distinctive visitor experiences. We also recently sought to strengthen our travel trade partnerships across the U.S., the Northeast U.S. to be more precise. The Nevis Tourism Authority, in partnership with the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, strengthened its presence in key U.S. Northeast markets through the second annual Northeast Summer Showcase, visiting Long Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Boston. With more than 100 travel advisors registered at each stop and projected total attendance exceeding 650, the showcase connected Nevis directly with top producing advisors from networks including Virtuoso, Signature Travel Network, Ensemble, Travel Leaders, and AAA Travel. We were represented by Fayon Jones from the Nevis Tourism Authority. Nevis also participated just this weekend at the ASTA, American Society of Travel Advisors Caribbean Showcase, which was held on our sister St. Kitts from August 22nd to 25th. It ends today. And that afforded an opportunity for us to engage directly with more than 70 U.S. travel advisors and key industry partners. ASTA is a leading professional association for the travel advisor community, and the showcase provides destinations with an important platform for education, networking, and business development. I was privileged to be there and to have been able to speak for a few minutes on Nevis in my capacity as Minister of Tourism. We also had the opportunity for the CEO of the Nevis Tourism Authority, Ms. Andy Ravieri. She also spoke, and we were able to showcase both islands to these travel advisors. So travel advisors are the ones who assist persons in their bookings, who curate trips, and so them being here and being able to immerse themselves in what we offer is a significant milestone. Each month I try to give you what we have collected for our tourism development levy, which I remind you is a 3% charge on stays, visitor stays, and restaurant consumption. And I'm told that the collection for July, which we would have received in August, for this year, July, was $223,767.56. Now, last year, July, we would have collected $273,651.57. So this year, we have registered for the first time for the year a shortfall. This is the first month for the year that we have collected less than we would have done last year. I believe that that is demonstrative of the realities that we're in the slow season, and that the summer months tend not to yield as much in terms of revenue as the winter months do. It also means, of course, ladies and gentlemen, that we must continue our efforts to promote summer travel and to ensure that we shorten this off-season. Let me continue with some other tourism updates. I feel very proud that the 2026 Nevis Garden Competition is now coming to a close. The prize-giving ceremony is scheduled to take place at the beautiful gardens at Bath Springs. This year's winners will be announced shortly. This garden competition happens every other year, and there has been a very positive response to this year's competition. Despite the drought and difficult weather, we had over 20 households participating and some 7 institutions across various categories, including ornamental plants, crops, and fruit trees. The competition is much more than gardening. It is aimed at strengthening community-based tourism, preserving our tradition of front and backyard gardening, promoting food security, and enhancing the aesthetic beauty and appeal of the island of Nevis. Our gardens are not only for us to enjoy, they're also part of the experience that we offer our guests. We want to express sincere gratitude to all of those who are involved in this very important undertaking. Now, for those members of the media and the public who are looking to take their special someone to a special event, we are introducing something that has not been done before. And we are having a dinner party at the Bath Hotel here in Nevis. So the Ministry of Tourism will be hosting a vintage luxe dinner at the historic Bath Hotel on Thursday, 24th September. The evening promises to be a timeless, elevated experience, featuring a meal that reflects the sophistication of a bygone era in a timeless setting. Patrons are encouraged to wear attire of the 1900s at this affair. Tickets for the Vintage Lux dinner are currently available at the Ministry of Tourism at the Social Security building at the cost of just US $100 or EC $270. Tickets are also available online at www.caribetickets.com. That's CARIBETICKETS.com. Tickets are, of course, limited because this is a very, unusual event. It will be at the Bath Hotel, and it will be themed around the 1900s. And so I expect people will show up in their grandeur. It is intended to be an elevated experience. Tickets are US $100 or EC $270. So please, remember that the Bath Hotel was built in 1778, and it's the first hotel established in the Caribbean. So Nevis, rightly, can boast that we are the birthplace of Caribbean hospitality. So we encourage one and all to go out and be a part of that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to get through, as I said, the various aspects that have been sent to me by the various ministries, and so I move now quickly to the Ministry of Education. The Department of Sports continues to celebrate our athletes' achievements while delivering exciting events for the Nevis community. Today, I am pleased to provide the latest updates coming from that department. The Goodwill Games. It is with immense pride that we congratulate I call him Tigger, Tiadrian Truss, on winning a bronze medal at the Goodwill Games held in Trinidad. He would have competed in the 50-meter freestyle swimming and in the category 11 to 12-year-olds, and Tigger would have recorded a bronze medal. It is simply phenomenal that we have youngsters now swimming competitively from Nevis. And here is young Mr. Truss, who would have competed at the Goodwill Games in Trinidad and would have achieved a bronze medal. We congratulate him for his hard work, his discipline, the caliber of training, but also the support system around him, his coaches, his family. We say congratulations to them all, and we look forward to even greater things from Tigger as he moves forward. We also want to commend the organizers of the Culturama Drag Race, which occurred on August 16th, slightly after Culturama, but the race was, I'm told, quite successful, and we extend, of course, our thanks to all of those who participated. I want to announce now that building on the momentum of that drag race, there will be a major drag racing event happening on 13th of September as part of the Independence celebrations this year. Further details regarding registration, schedules, and event logistics will be released in the coming weeks. But I'm told that the Independence drag racing happening on the 13th of September will be significant, and so we ask persons to get involved. As always, through the Department of Sports, we want to thank those athletes, those organizations who sponsor, and we want to thank the media who have been our partners in getting the word out. Of course, this is now the season for receiving exam results. And we want to say that the exam results are in. I do not today propose to give any details. That will come from the Ministry of Education because results tend to be at this stage only preliminary. What I can say is that based on the preliminary information, the students here in Nevis seem to have acquitted themselves well. We want to congratulate all of those who are successful. We want to congratulate their teachers, their support systems, their parents, and to thank the teachers and staff who we know go the extra mile to ensure that these students get the very best in terms of their education. We also, ladies and gentlemen, want to extend our best wishes to those students who may not have done as well as they wanted to, and to say to them that they should keep trying. That the fact that they did not get the number of subjects or the pass grades that they wanted ought not to deter them. That success comes in different forms. And as somebody said to me one time, not everybody's pot boils in at the same time. So, do not be dismayed. Keep trying. Keep trying. Success really comes from perseverance. And so we say thank you to all, and we encourage those students to continue on their path to greatness. I also wish to bring a very important matter to the attention of parents and students and guardians, of course, that the process for candidates who may wish to have their recently released examination grades reviewed or challenged, there is a process. And the grade review period will open on Tuesday, September 1st and close on Tuesday, September 15th. Candidates who wish to request a review are therefore encouraged to pay close attention to the deadline and complete the review process within the stipulated period. Now, this is critical because I'm told that the deadline ends September 15th, 2 p.m. That is the deadline, September 15th at 2 p.m. If you submit a request for a review after that period, it will not be considered. So the period opens on September 1st, it ends on September 15th at 2 p.m. The cost of a grade review is 85 EC dollars per subject. For candidates in Nevis, a form for grade review can be obtained from the Department of Education at Marion Heights. Candidates are asked to complete the form and submit the payment and carefully follow the instructions on the form. We also wish to specifically address candidates whose results have been recorded as UNG or ABS. These candidates should contact the examinations department directly for guidance on the appropriate next steps. In St. Kitts, the examinations department can be contacted at 467-1877, and in Nevis, candidates can contact the Department of Education at 469-5521, extension 5085. We encourage candidates and their families to review their results carefully, and where there are concerns, to make use of the established processes within the stated time frame. Now, even as some students are receiving their grades for the overseas exam, we're getting closer to the start of the new school year. And the Ministry of Education is actively preparing. As part of those preparations, the Ministry will host its Leadership Summit from August 26th to 28th, 2026, and that summit will bring together our principals, deputy principals, school management teams for 3 days of focused engagement ahead of the new academic year. Following the Leadership Summit, we'll bring together our wider education family for the annual back-to-school convocation, and that will be on Monday, August 31st at 8:30 a.m. at NEPAC. The convocation is for all, let me emphasize, all school staff and staff within the Ministry of Education. You're encouraged to attend and to be punctual. Preparations will then culminate with what we are all looking forward to, the return of our students on Monday, September 7th, 2026. So, we're ready? We're getting ready. I should also add that we are aware that there are some remedial work to be done at some of the schools, and that we have teams who are out who are taking care of those works. We had indicated that there will be no major works done this summer, but certainly there are lots of minor things. I want to just remind the public that school maintenance is an ongoing matter. Oftentimes I know people get frustrated because they say, oh, I went to the school, there was a pipe leaking, there was a door that was damaged, there was a window that was damaged, and we understand that. But it is an ongoing matter. In fact, I will share with the public and ask the public to please help us in maintaining the quality of our infrastructure. It is very disheartening, members of the press, when each summer the government spends taxpayers' money to install new toilets, to install new sinks, to paint, and only then when school starts, within a week sometimes, those toilets have been destroyed. We have had examples of students placing big rocks into toilets. We've had examples of graffiti with all manner of lewdness sprayed and painted on our walls at our schools. Furniture destroyed. The vandalism is atrocious. And we do not believe that people who love this island and are truly patriotic would vandalize the very tools that they need to make learning more easy. And so we invite the public. Parents, please speak to your children. We know sometimes we put all the pressure on the teachers, but training begins at home. The teachers can only reinforce what you are already doing at home. And if you're not doing a good job at home, it is unfair of you to put that entire burden on the teachers at school. They're only humans. And so I ask parents to do their part. It is unconscionable for the level of vandalism that we experience in our schools, the breaking of windows, the breaking of doors, the vandalizing of toilets. It is unconscionable. Sometimes the same parents then turn around and criticize and say, we're not doing enough. But you could understand the frustration of when new infrastructure is put in place, for that infrastructure then to be summarily destroyed by vandals. And so we encourage the students themselves, please take care of the furniture, take care of the equipment, take care of our schools. Let me move forward now to look at the Ministry of Works. The Public Works Department has continued to do its work. We have, of course, recently finished the Brown Pasture Morgan Estate Road project, and we are now doing some fencing. As the public knows, this is the policy of this government, that if we disturb your fence line, if we disturb your property lines, rather than trying to compensate people for the lost land that we would have encroached upon, we try to erect a good fence for you. And where we have encroached on your fencing, we replace it. And so we are looking to reconstruct fencing along the frontage of 3 properties. And we're also doing a 270-foot stretch of road leading to a prominent farmer in that area and the various lots that are served by that road. We are still working on a major drainage project at Lower Prospect. 550 feet of U-drain itself is 100% complete, but we have some other remedial works to do there, including some wall construction, and that is being done. We are currently on the final leg of our major drainage in Morning Star, Banyan Tree area. We have completed approximately 250 feet of concrete block drain and about 168 feet of rock lining of a water course. We know that persons in that area complain about flooding, and so we're trying to fix that problem. The Nevis Disaster Management Department continues, ladies and gentlemen, to be very active. We know that we're in the hurricane season, and whilst we pray for the best, we continue to prepare for any eventuality. And so we would have had our summer safety camp that was held from 10th to 21st August. We had 85 participants and 75 would have completed the program. This camp introduced children and youth ages 5 to 15 to practical safety and survival skills to help them respond appropriately in the event of a hazard or disaster. The camp was sponsored by the Bank of Nevis, Boulder Corporation, and of course the Nevis Island Administration. We say thank you to our partners. Hazmat, hazardous materials training. We had some training again through the Nevis Disaster Management Department from the 24th to 26th August to deal with hazardous materials. This workshop will provide employees, first responders, supervisors, and stakeholders with a basic understanding of hazardous materials, the risks they present, and the procedures required to work safely around them. We also have had a post-disaster needs assessment and recovery planning training, and that would have happened, will happen from 7th to the 10th of September. This again is a capacity building initiative being undertaken through the leadership of the Nevis Disaster Management Department. Let me switch to the critical subject of water. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think all of us will admit that Nevis is in the throes of the worst drought that we have seen in the past several years. Ordinarily, we would be getting a lot of rainfall at this time. That has not been the case. Where we have had recently some scattered showers, we have not had a good downpour in some time. I believe, and I want publicly today to recognize the leadership of the Honorable Spencer Brandt, because I believe that he has led his team at the Water Department with distinction. It is a matter of some pride for the island of Nevis that we have not had any disruptions in our water supply despite this significant drought. I say that because I look at the news that we get from around the region. In the United States Virgin Islands, the people there are complaining. They are petitioning, they are making noise because WAPA, they say, isn't providing the water for them. In the British Virgin Islands, I saw recently a comment from the leader of the opposition there calling on the government to pay for the delivery in trucks of water to residents in the British Virgin Islands. In Antigua, in St. Martin, even in Puerto Rico, what we would consider a big country, a developed country, a country that has access to United States funding, Puerto Rico has declared a water crisis. I am to encourage our people not to take these gains for granted. I am encouraging our people to conserve water as much as possible. But I cannot, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot do anything but praise the commitment, the investment, and the strides that have been made in Nevis in relation to water. Nowhere around our sub-region is there a record as good as Nevis in relation to the delivery of this critical resource to the people of our island. This did not come about by accident. It came about by strategic planning and significant investment. On the last look, we have now up to about $60 million that we would have invested in water, both in upgrading our distribution network and in significant storage capacity. I think it's a matter of much pride, and all of us as Nevisians should feel proud that our island now has capacity storage of 4 million gallons per day. We have continued in our relentless quest to get more water. And so we have drilling that is undergoing, and we have, of course, commissioned a small desalination plant as well. In terms of the drilling, we have been at the Descents site in Gingerland for some time. The drillers continue to encounter difficulties with that site. We are now down at a depth of 400 feet, and the difficulties have to do with the type of soil, because apparently when they go down to a particular depth, the wells keep collapsing. You may well ask, why are we still, after all these weeks, persistent with Descents? It's because the studies that we have done tell us that there is significant water available at that site. And that is why we have persevered. But it has been difficult. So as we speak, the drillers are off island. They come back at the end of this month, and they are bringing some additional specialist equipment which they hope will allow us to access this water at Descents. So I want the public to know that these drilling, it's not straightforward, it's difficult, it's technical. And on that site, we keep having the wells caving in. And so we continue to try simply because the science tells us that that site is significant insofar as the availability of water is concerned. We have other sites that we've identified, including sites in church ground. And so we'll have to take a decision once the drillers are back, whether we continue to persevere or we relocate to some other site. But that is the reason why we have been persistent with that site, is because of the promise that it holds for significant water. The Nevis Water Department has installed 4-inch mains in the New River area to facilitate livestock farmers. A total of 2,000 feet of pipe was laid, and that is on the road going up to the government quarry. Work there lasted for the month, from July 7th to August 7th. And to facilitate road repairs in the camps area next to the Franklin Brown Community Center, we've laid approximately 500 feet of 4-inch PVC mains and a fire hydrant. And I think that that's important, because where we are developing roads in the communities and water in the communities, we're also putting in fire hydrants in the event that there is, of course, any fire in the area. The water storage tank, and this is good news for the people of St. Thomas's. You had a tank there with a capacity of 200,000 gallons. That tank has now been fully refurbished inside and out. And we expect that with that refurbishment, we are told by the experts that that tank should give us another 50 years in terms of service. So that tank at Jessups is now back in commission, fully refurbished. Let me move quickly, ladies and gentlemen, to health and gender. I just want to report that the Gingerland Health Center recently completed significant electrical upgrades, including the commission of a brand new FG Wilson generator, an automatic transfer switch to strengthen that facility's resilience and ensure greater continuity of essential healthcare services during power outages and other emergencies. Sneaker Day turns 10. The Health Promotion Unit is asking me to tell you to wear your sneakers on Sneaker Day. That is going to be on September 11th. Starting at 9 a.m., they're going to have Sneaker Day, and they said fun-filled day, Sneaker Day, and scavenger hunt in and around Charlestown. Get ready to move, explore, team up, and have fun as we mark this special milestone of a decade, 10 years. Wear red and join the hunt. Check out their flyer on their Facebook page for all the details. 10 years of movement, one big scavenger hunt. You know, every year I compete in the sneaker day, and I've never been able to win. I don't know why, but I'm trying again this year for sure. So 11th of September, Sneaker Day. We ask everyone to be a part of that. Of course, the idea is to have some fun, but also achieve a very important initiative of having greater mobility, having our people moving. We're not all like P.S. Daniel who runs. Some of us can't run because the knees aren't that great, but we can walk and we can do as much as we can. Moderate exercise is still good exercise, and it is better than no exercise. And so as we fight NCDs, we fight obesity, we invite our people to get up, get out, and get moving. The Health Promotion Unit is also inviting the general public to its annual Caribbean Wellness Day walk. That will happen on September 12th, starting at the Malcolm Gishard Park. The theme, Engage, Empower, Elevate, working together to improve health and well-being for all. 5:30 a.m. is the warm-up, 6 a.m. is the walk. So, go to sleep early, get up and go to this walk. It's a fantastic walk. It takes you from MGR Park to the Bypass Road, Pump Road, Main Road. You go over Bath Hill, past Reliable Gas Station. You then hit this through town to Samuel Hunkins Drive and back to MGR. And we welcome everybody. It's a good walk. They're asking for a donation. Note the language. A donation of $20 to help them to deliver this. We had a significant milestone just yesterday, Monday, where the Infant Daycare Assistance Program had its transition ceremony. The Department of Gender Affairs hosted its Infant Daycare Assistance Program transition ceremony, celebrating families whose children are transitioning from daycare. This year, 17 families were supported through generous partnership with the TDC Group of Companies and Nev Kids Factory. TDC provided back-to-school gift vouchers, and Nev Kids Factory provided uniform vouchers for preschoolers. The ceremony highlighted the continued commitment of the Nevis Island Administration to supporting families, reducing barriers to early childhood education, and ensuring that children are adequately prepared for the transition into preschool. So, we continue this program, an excellent program, and kudos to the Minister, Honorable Janelle Nisbet, and her entire team for delivering this program. But kudos, whenever I talk about this program, to Africa Wilkes. It was her brainchild. She's the one who came forward to us and asked whether such a program could be implemented. And so we thank her for the idea. We thank, of course, Cabinet colleagues for agreeing to implement and to fund. And we thank the families for their participation. We recognize that there was a gap and that many families, particular families who were not as financially endowed, that they were struggling to get daycare for their children. Imagine, if you will, that you are a parent, single parent, with 3 or 4 children at that age, and you have to go out to work. It creates tremendous hardship and difficulty. And so we decided to step in and to provide some relief. And we now have 17 families who would have graduated, and of course it's a continuous program, so new families are also coming into the program. We think that's an excellent program, and again, we thank all those involved. The Department of Gender Affairs, in collaboration with Giggles and Growth, will host an estate planning and wills information sharing seminar on Tuesday, September 14th, 2026 from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park. Now, why is this important? It's facilitated, I should say first, by Mrs. Cindy Herbert, who's an attorney at law, and the session is open to everyone. It is important because the department continues to commit itself and its resources to financial empowerment, informed decision-making, and family protection. And let me just make a plug here. A lot of us, we go through our lives thinking that we are invincible. A lot of us, because we wake up and we feel good, we tell ourselves that nothing can happen, nothing will happen. That is the power of hope, which is also important to take us through life. But if we understand life, we also understand that we must, even as we pray for the best, prepare for the worst. And there are too many instances, members of the media and members of the public, where persons have transitioned before their time, and everybody's transition is before their time. Whether you're 1 or you're 101, it's before your time. You want to live as long as possible. But oftentimes when people transition, there is no preparation. They have not stated what will happen to what they leave behind. And I practiced as a lawyer for many years before coming to this role in government. And I can tell you, it leads to mass confusion and difficulty among families. And so what the Gender Affairs Department is trying to do here is to encourage Nevisians to be responsible. It's a word you hear from this lectern time and time again. To be responsible, to put their houses in order. And so if you have children, you have loved ones, and you have property, a will allows you to make provision for your property if and when you transition. I ought not to say if, when, because they say that that is an end that awaits us all. Make provision. Say what you have for little Johnny, and what you have for little Mary, and what you have for little Susie. Say what you have for your wife, or for your husband, or for your neighbor, or for your church. Say what you have to support your pets when you're gone. Make the provision. Because if you do not, what can result could be a matter of confusion within families. And a lot of times those who end up benefiting did not in fact do anything to help you. But they walk in because they are your relative, even though they turned their backs on you and it was your neighbor who took care of you. But you made no provision. And so your neighbor cannot benefit from what you left. That relative who took no interest in you walks in and says, hey, I'm the only surviving son. And that relative collects everything. And that neighbor, that cousin, that friend who cared for you gets nothing. So please, make provision. Go and see your lawyer, or better still, go to this seminar and learn what you need to learn about wills and taking care of what you own after you would have transitioned. Let me give a quick update, ladies and gentlemen, on the dialysis unit that is being constructed. I'm told that the construction is now nearly complete. We expect that that will be completed in the month of September. The dialysis equipment is already on island. We're expecting generators and water tanks to be on island shortly. Importantly, our hemodialysis nurses have arrived on island. 3 nurses have been hired and they are already here. We thank God for their safe passage to Nevis. And we hope to open the facility and have our first patients dealt with there within the next 2 months. I want to go on record to thank Olivia Jensen and the Destiny Development for this significant donation to Nevis. As I would have explained in my previous press conference, this dialysis center is a donation that has been made by Mr. Jensen, who is a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, and his proposed Destiny Development to the people of Nevis. It covers construction, equipment, staffing, and funding for 2 years. I'm also advised that we've secured a nurse manager already for the unit. And we are in the final stages of having the nephrologist arrangement set up. We have 2 nephrologists on St. Kitts, and we're seeking to partner with St. Kitts to make those nephrologists available to us here in Nevis, whilst also sourcing our own nephrologists so that we can have someone on island in the fullness of time. Let me just refer very briefly and lastly to Culturama. I believe all the accounts and reports are in, and the overwhelming sense is that Culturama 52 was a resounding success. It was celebrated from July 23rd to August 4th under the slogan, Our Heritage Proud and True. It's Culturama 52. I want to congratulate the Honorable Eric Evelyn for leading his team. I also want to congratulate Mr. Swain Evelyn, Chairman of Culturama. He is filling some big shoes because, of course, that position was held for many, many years by Mr. Abernathy Liebert. Well, Swain is there, and Swain, I believe, has delivered an excellent Culturama. I also, while I have this rostrum, want to wish him a speedy recovery. He had a major health scare and was hospitalized, but the last time I went to see him, he was talking, and I'm told walking, and hopefully back to normal. So Swain, if you're listening, all the very best, and thank you for all that you and the team did for Culturama. Culturama 52 winners, let me just go through. The Republic Bank, Mr. and Miss Talented Youth, Portia Perkins and Keznambi Archibald. Charleston Primary School, sponsored by the Nevis Cooperative Credit Union. Junior Kaiso was Zenobia Johnson, singing under the name Mighty Zen. National Bank Miss Swimmer was Kadisha Mully, sponsored by Caribbean Digital Displays. National Bank Mr. Cool was Devon Brown, sponsored by Nivision Heritage Village. Bank of Nevis Miss Culture Queen is none other than Queen Mia Alexander. National Bank Panorama winners were the Oali Rhythms Steel Orchestra. National Bank Groovy winner was Odito Morton, singing under the name Adoa. And this is his repeat. They say in Calypso, two-peat. He has won twice in a row. And National Bank Power winners are Rocco and Chris Brown, Sobriquet Rocco Dan and Ras Brown, son and father combination, or maybe it's a father and son combination, and this is a three-peat for them. So 3 years in a row, Rocco Dan and Ras Brown have won. Ras Brown, if you're listening, I still want that drink from you off the winnings, because every year, by the time I get to him, he tells me the money finished. So, Ras Brown, if you're listening, I'm coming to look for you. TDC, Senior Kaiso. Winner was Kejel Smitten, who sings under the name Cairo. Senior Street Parade winner was Fantasy, Four Seasons Resort, Whispers of Wally. Senior Street Parade Folklore was David's Dynasty. Senior Street Parade Float was You Too Young to Know About This. Senior Street Parade Old Mass, Back in the Good Old Days. Road March Champion, DVX Reloaded. I want to extend heartfelt congratulations to all the winners, but also all the participants, the revelers, the vendors, everyone who made Culture Armor 52 a success. We can't do it without you, and so we thank you for your participation. Culture Armor 53, the date's already out. It will be July 22nd to August 3rd, 2027, and the Secretariat is currently accepting entries for the Culture Armor 53 slogan competition. All entries must be submitted to the Culture Armor Secretariat by Monday, November 30th this year, and alternatively entries can be emailed to slogan@culturearmornevis.com. Please note that entries will not be accepted over the phone. There's a prize. You get tickets, complimentary tickets to every event, a plaque, and a cash prize of $500. Registration. Now, Culture Armor is out of the blocks early. I've never seen this before, because they're telling me to tell you that they're now accepting registrations for Culture Armor 53. Mr. and Miss Talented Youth Pageant, that registration ends on November 30th, 2026. Miss Culture Swimwear and Mr. Cool, registration ends Monday, November 30th, 2026. Miss Culture Queen Pageant, registration ends Monday, November 30th, 2026. And application forms can be collected from and returned to the Culture Armor Secretariat, located at the Cotton Ginnery Mall, or visit www.culturearmornevis.com to access the forms online. Ladies and gentlemen, I will leave that there and invite your questions if you have any for me.
Good morning, Mr. Premier, and good morning to members of the media.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Premier, can you give us some, well, first off, did I say my name? Sorry about that.
You're so famous that you don't need to say your name anymore, but yes, for the record, yes.
Shamika Budgen,
Yes.
Vaughn Radio. Question 1. Can you give us some feedback about Nevis's road naming project? I know that some town hall meetings were held on the island pertaining to the project. So how is the feedback from the public, and what is expected during the project? Question 2, are there any thoughts of merging Culturama and the Mango Fest as they are hosted within the same month? With the government's house-to-house visits currently in motion, what are some of the major concerns from persons in the community, and what are the government's plans to rectify those issues, if there are any? Can we have an update on the airport? Mr. Premier, you just mentioned, I know that you just mentioned Culturama and stated that it was successful. But are there any plans to bring back our local bands. I worked during this year's festival, and honestly, I did not see much from our local bands. I don't have any problem with bands from St. Kitts, as there are some great bands on St. Kitts. But seeing that it's a local festival, I feel that there should be, you know, more participation from our local bands. So, are there any plans even for Culturama 53? Another question. Will the Destiny proposal be made available to the media for us to view? If so, when? Will the CCM party field any new candidates in any of the constituencies, whether local or federal, for the upcoming elections? And can we have an update on the construction of the broiler processing facility? That's it for me for now. Thank you.
Ms. Budgeon, I think this is the entire press conference. I don't know there's room left. There should be no more questions, I hope, after this. Ms. Budgeon, the road naming project. So the project, the intention of the project is to resolve a long-standing problem on the island, that we do not have proper names for our roads and our boundaries and communities are not properly delineated. And so oftentimes if you're trying to explain to someone how to get to you, whether for a delivery or a message or even sometimes if you have someone visiting, it becomes extremely difficult. In other countries, you can say, my house is at the junction of X Street and Y Avenue. Nevis, it's not possible to do that. So we recognized there was a huge gap, and we thought as we celebrate this year 43 years of independence that it would be an important milestone if we could achieve that by independence. In order to do that, we wanted some buy-in from the public, naturally. As government, we always try to consult with the public. I am disappointed, however, that the town hall meetings, I gather, the first one at Pond Hill, was not very well attended at all. So people did not come out. So I can't tell you what the feedback was like because many people did not show up at that one. I have not had a feedback on the second one that was convened. I think there was one here in town. So the minister has not yet reported what the turnout was like. But what we've realized is that we have taken different themes for the road namings. So some are based on plants, some are based on flowers, some are based on something historic in that community. So they're different themes. And what we really wanted was the buy-in from the community. So the planning department, which is leading this process, was clearly able to come up with its own ideas, and we have been sharing those. Now I'm told that there have been focused discussions with various individuals in the communities, but we wanted a wider town hall setting, but the attendance has not been, certainly for the first one, what we would have desired. So my response is to really throw it back to the public to say, please, if you can participate. We don't want to go and name a street, Daniel Avenue, and then people start to get up in arms and who's Daniel and why is Daniel Avenue here? That should have been, some other name. That should have been Budgeon Lane. We really want the public to understand what we're doing, and the only way you can understand is to participate, and we are offering the opportunity to participate. Now I believe that there's another one town hall that is due, and so I'm hopeful that people would go out for that one, right? The project, I think the benefits of the project are obvious. For deliveries, even now I see that many restaurants are doing food deliveries, the ability now plug your location into GPS and all of that, and just accessibility. Also for visitors to the island, it is very difficult for people to navigate Nevis simply because we don't have proper road signage and road markings. So we are hopeful that this can solve that problem. So again, I want to commend the team at planning, led by Mr. Pemberton, Euro Pemberton, but also to commend Minister Brand, who has really championed this at the cabinet level. Culturama Mango Fest merger, no, there's no current appetite for merger, but what I can tell you is that there will be some discussions about greater collaboration and for those to work together to see how we can do more for both. Those events, Ms. Budgeon, are qualitatively different because the Mango Fest is really designed to extend the tourism season. The audience that the Mango Fest seeks to appeal to is a regional and international audience. Culturama is different in nature in terms of what it seeks to do, which is a preservation of the local culture. And of course, the main patrons for Culturama tend to be Nevisians and Kittitians at home and those abroad coming home. They are an important demographic, but that is the primary sort of target for Culturama.
But wouldn't it be a good thing to promote our culture, to put it out there internationally as well, not just for our local folks?
So it is a good thing, but you asked me a specific question. Are we merging the two? And so that's a separate question. Of course, it'd be a good thing to try to expand the reach of Culturama. But I'm saying the current audience for Culturama is an audience which is local and diasporic. Those are the people, when we look at who's here for Culturama, those tend to be the people. Of course, they bring friends and family. And of course, we have, as we did this year, people from Saba, etc., who are coming over from the neighboring islands. But that has been the usual demographic for Culturama. The Mango Fest is qualitatively something different in terms of who it is aimed at and what it seeks to achieve. It's also a matter that the Mango Fest, I want the public to know, was really framed around the availability of mangoes. So the seasonality of the fruit also dictates when we have the Mango Fest. And that is why it has fallen where it has fallen, because based on the advice that we've had, that is usually the best season for mangoes and the availability of mangoes on the island. We don't want to push it any later, and certainly we don't want to bring Culturama forward either. So we are doing these two festivals. I think where we are exerting effort now is how we can collaborate. So that is when we are promoting Mango Fest, we're also promoting Culturama. And when we're promoting Culturama, we're also promoting Mango Fest. Mango Fest comes before, so there's an opportunity as part of the Mango Fest to also have cultural events and the exposure to what we're doing in terms of Culturama.
I'll just put this out there. Probably you guys should really think about it to merge. Maybe it kind of happened right now, but I've had persons who came for Culturama. They would say, Lord, I wish I could have been here for the Mango Festival or taste some mangoes. So you know that person still have interest for the Mango Fest, even that they came for the festival. So probably you guys could...
And that is the case, but the reason why they told you they wish they could taste mango when you're here for culture is because the mango season is over. So if we put the Mango Festival then, where the mango is going to come from? That's why I made the point. Local people don't want any frozen mango. That part of the appeal of the Mango Festival is they have mango stoning, they have mango, all kind of things. It's the immersed people. So that's the part of it is the timing. That's the point I was trying to make. That we have timed the Mango Festival ideally so that mangoes are still available naturally. Because that's part of it. So if we were to push the Mango Festival to the end of July, the start of August, the argument is that the availability of mangoes would be less. The truth be told, that now with climate change, who knows? It looks like we're getting mango in February and March now, so we're not even sure. But that is the thinking. But the idea is noted, and it's something that I know we have already agreed we'll do greater collaboration. But in terms of a merger of the two events, that has not been on the table. But we'll take that under consideration. The major concerns from the community, as we've walked through, and I'm going to say something here that is probably a little interesting. We have gone through now a significant, we've touched every parish in Nevis thus far with these walkthroughs. We were in Brownhill yesterday, thanks to the good people of Brownhill. We will be in Butlers this afternoon, God willing. And I think it is instructive what is not coming up. We have not heard anyone that we have walked around, talked to, come with any concerns about this Destiny project. I say that because I think we have spent so much time on social media and there's so much noise on radio about it. You would have thought that when you go to people's homes, that would be issue number one. Issue has not come up. On the few occasions that youngsters have raised it, it has largely been to do with when is the project going to start. That is the concern. When is it going to start? So that is instructive because it tells me that there is a certain disconnect that we get sometimes from those who spend their time on social media and exist in a sort of echo chamber and start to speak about all Nevisians and what Nevisians want. When you go to Nevis people's homes now, you're having a conversation with them, that doesn't appear to be very high on the agenda, save and except they want to know when the project is going to start. What I will say is that the main thing that I have heard from residents is to do with the cost of electricity. That has been the main feedback, the cost of electricity. Everywhere we go, people are complaining that the cost has significantly increased for most of them. Interestingly, in a very few cases, they've said they have not noticed any increase or any significant increase. But for the majority of persons, they have indicated that they're seeing a significant increase. We continue to urge our consumers to practice conservation, to try not to use electricity excessively or unnecessarily. And of course, we have apologized because the reality was that the pressure of carrying the fuel surcharge for an additional period was beyond the capacity of the government. We carried it for 4 years. From 2022 until 2026, households paid no fuel surcharge in Nevis. With the escalating costs occasioned by the war in Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, we could not continue. We came, we explained, and we understand the difficulty. But it is a burden that everybody is bearing together. None of us is exempt from it. And we are asking persons, please, to conserve electricity. We are trying our very best to expedite our deployment of renewable energy to insulate ourselves from the incredibly difficult situation we find ourselves in being dependent on fossil fuels. And we're asking persons to conserve energy. People here are telling me that they would go to work leaving on their AC and things like that because they want to come home to a cool house. I understand that, but to me, those are the types of things that can lead to real difficulty insofar as your energy costs are concerned. Another household has said that in terms of their washing, they use machines and dryers, electric dryers, and they were washing several times a week because as something got dirty, they threw it into the washer, threw it into the dryer. And they've now cut back by only doing that particular chore once or twice a week. And they've seen a difference. So there are certain steps I think that persons can take, and we're trying our very best to assist as best as we can. What I have committed to, Ms. Budgeon, is that once we see some relief, that relief will be passed on immediately to the consumers. So that is what we're hoping. And so if you're like me, I watch the news every day to hear that there's a peace deal and that the street has reopened. Our plans to bring back the local bands. You couched the question in an interesting way, because I wasn't aware the local bands had gone anywhere. The local bands are here, Ms. Budgeon. It is a matter for the local bands whether they want to participate in Culturama or not. And I want to make that very clear. The Culturama is open to all bands. This year, we had Ultimate Band that was local and involved itself. And then, what's it called? DVX. Let me see, I get the name right because I don't want to get myself into any trouble. But they won the Road March this year. They won the Road March this year. And well, no, they had a band this year. As far as I know, they had a band. You know the DJ because he's quite famous. That's Mr. Bartlett. But they had a band. I'm not finding information. But it's DVX, I think, Reloaded. And they won Road March because they put together a band this year and they were on the road and won the Road March. Now, let me be very clear. And I make this appeal to all Nevisians. If you have your talent and you wish to showcase your talent, Culturama is the biggest stage available. This year, we had a situation where one of the bands for the second year boycotted the Culturama. For the second year. We met, I'm advised, we invited, of course, all the bands, and their position was that they wanted a specific payment plan. They wanted monies at a particular time and the balance by a particular time. And if they could not get that, then they would not participate. The government could not guarantee that. I think everybody knows that when they deal with government, as we said, the money is sure, but sometimes it takes a little while because a lot of it is dependent on our cash flow. And we knew that if we made that commitment to one band, we'll have to make it to every other vendor. And so we could not meet the demand. We explained, but the band said, no money, no love. You can't pay us what we want, how we want it, we will not participate. That is my understanding. And so that band for the second year decided to stay out of Culturama. The government can't do anything about that, Ms. Budgeon. The other band, big band, is the core band, as far as I understand. And I'm not sure what happened with them this year. But again, the door is open. So whether you're Odyssey, Core, Ultimate, DVX, or any new band that comes aboard, the government here in Nevis is 100% supportive. But we require partnership. People cannot expect to just come and demand money and say this has to be the way, and that is just not how it works. And so we want our people to understand. The bands from St. Kitts came up, they partnered with us. They brought, of course, their fans across with them, and some say it was one of the best juves that they've seen in a very long time, right here in Nevis. So we want our bands, but I go further to say that our bands in Nevis, and I don't say this as a knock on them. I recognize that it's a difficult business to be in. But our bands in Nevis need to have a developmental pathway for themselves. They cannot, as some have been doing, simply wait for Culturama time each year to bring out music or to play someplace. I am reminded of a story from Antigua. There was a little band there that became a major band in Antigua and a major regional international band called Burning Flames. And Burning Flames, I'm told, used to go every Sunday afternoon to a place called Jampan in Antigua and just play. And people started to gather around. That's how you build an audience. We have some bands in Nevis, we do not hear them until we announce Culturama. It's the only time you ever hear about them is Culturama time. And then they come and they say, these are our demands. We want this, we want that, we want the other. And if we don't get that, we're pulling away and taking away our services. We can't fault the government for that. I have said to the bands in Nevis, we have plug-and-play facilities like the Culturama Village. The government is prepared to make the village available for free. For free. Come, build an audience, release music, have events. I see in St. Kitts all kind of birthday bashment and this, that, and the other, and the bands in St. Kitts are always busy. You cannot wait each year for Culturama, and that's the only time people hear from you. You can't build an audience that way. And I don't know what the difficulties are. I invite them to come in and have a chat if it is that there are things that we can do. But interestingly, I heard Mr. Ronaldo Bartlett from DVX band on a show recently, and he was commenting on the difference between St. Kitts and Nevis and saying that in Nevis, the level of support, financial support that the government gives for bands to be on the road is non-existent in St. Kitts. In Nevis, we pay for the truck, trailer, generator. We pay to build up the whatever the band is, what is that, the trailer it's called? We carry all of the expenses associated with having bands on the road in Nevis, and we pay the bands to be on the road. In St. Kitts, I'm told, the bands in St. Kitts have to find their own money. They have to find sponsors if they want to be on the road. Now, the difference that some have pointed out is that in St. Kitts, they get a larger reward if they win Road March. I think the amount on there was $25,000. Right? If they win the Road March. This is what my understanding is. But I will tell you, it would be cheaper for us to do that in Nevis and don't help any of the bands to be on the road. So if we did what St. Kitts did, we would have to come up with a large cash prize for the winner, but it would mean that the bands have to raise their own money in order to be on the road. In Nevis, the only thing the bands have to do, bring their instrument, plug up, and play. Everything else is paid for by the Nevis Island Administration. And still, they say they're not participating. Well, what more can we do, Ms. Budget?
Mr. Kermit, can I interject?
Yes, please.
I know that you mentioned that the government provides the truck, the trailers, and the tractor.
The VOA Newsline got word on Tuesday morning that there wasn't any tractor for the ultimate band.
Yes.
And I don't think that they were on the road. So can you give us some information?
That was just
Because we were told that tractors were made available for the same.
no. Well, that was an allegation. I was involved very much in the morning. Unfortunately, I was unwell. I couldn't go to Juve this year, but I was at home and I got the calls coming in. It was an oversight. It was something that went wrong in terms of the planning. Tractors, we were some of the tractors that we were depending on Nevis, were not available to us at the last minute. One particular chap said his vehicle wasn't licensed. He didn't want to put it on the road. Others said that they couldn't. So the result was that Ultimate did not have something to pull that band on Juve, but we made sure that they had something for the following day, and they were on the road. So I have apologized to the members of Ultimate. That was a terrible oversight, but it was nothing that was deliberate. It was always planned that they would have a tractor, simply that at the end of the day, we were not able to get one for them for Juve. Big oversight, and we apologize because it ought not to have happened. But that does not change or devalue the point that I'm making, because had we got the tractor for Ultimate, it would have been paid for by the government. The point that I'm making is that everything that the bands need to be on the road, except the talent, because they're the ones who bring the talent, is paid for by government. Everything. And when I heard Mr. Bartlett make the comment that it's a fundamental difference to what applies in St. Kitts, I thought that that was instructive. And he was making the point that I think he said on average it costs about $15,000 for a band to be put on the road in Nevis. So if you imagine 3-4 Nevis bands, that's $45,000-$60,000 just there. And all they have to do is to come and play, and they're paid a fee for playing on the road. And some of them still have their troupe that they sell packages. So for example, if you've done the long jam from Gingerland with Core is on a truck, a trailer, everything paid for. Core is being paid a fee, and Core is still selling packages, clearly, as they're entitled to, for their troupe to come down. So for us, I don't understand why it is some people are not prepared to participate in the Culturama. I don't know. But my view is this, and I hope I don't sound unduly harsh. If you make yourself irrelevant, you will become irrelevant. And Culturama is the biggest stage available to our performers on the island of Nevis. If you decide you're going to stay off the biggest stage because of whatever, then that's a matter for you. But the show will go on. The show has gone on. And all I keep doing is encouraging our people to get involved, because Culturama belongs to all of us. And so that is my simple point that I would need to make today.
Ms. Premier, I'll just ask
Yes.
one more question pertaining to this.
Yes.
I'll just ask one more question pertaining to this.
I know that you just mentioned about the selling and the marketing for the bands, but I don't, well, you're older than I am, so I'm sure you can remember. Long time ago, we used to have village jamming. I don't know if, that's something that can come back to assist the bands, because when you compare St. Kitts to Nevis, and to be fair, St. Kitts, they do have a lot more activities than us here. They have Green Valley, etc., leading up to their sugar mass. And as you rightly said, Culturama is one of the biggest events up here for us. But other than that festival, what else big festival do we have that we can pull the community on the road? That's it for me.
So, well, I hear you, and there are many things I suppose we can do, but every question that you've asked points to what the government is going to do. And I am simply responding to you, Ms. Budgeon, by saying the government is trying, but the bands themselves need to step up. That's what I'm saying. So you say, yes, St. Kitts have Green Valley. You could have as many festivals as you want. But if the bands are going to behave towards that festival the way they behave towards Culturama, then what do we get? We're still going to have to bring up the St. Kitts bands for the Gingerama and the other festivals that we have in Nevis. So the bands themselves need to take some responsibility, and the bands need to work. The reason why I say we only hear from them during Culture Hour, they need to work on their craft and their product. The reason why when a sing gets band, Sugar Band or Grandmasters come to Nevis, that there's so many followers, is because they have built a following. Whenever people hear Sugar Band playing, they show up. Because they have, what they call them, sugar heads? Sugar heads, they have a following. What are the Nevis bands doing? I never hear nobody say Odyssey Head or Core Head or Ultimate Head. I mean, that's just the reality. We need to put in the work. What we're having in Nevis, and I'll just be blunt with you, Miss Budget. What we're having in Nevis is people show up and say, I'm a Nevis band. So pay me the same money. Take care of me because I'm from Nevis. That's the argument. And I'm saying, okay, we are here to promote Nevis. Absolutely. But what are you doing to make the product that you're offering a product that people want? That when we announce Odyssey's on the road, Core is on the road, we know people coming out because these bands have a crowd. They have a product that people want. And that is why I'm saying, go up into the village. Treat the village like how Born in Flames treat Jampan. Create some gigs. Band clash. You don't need the government to organize a band clash, you know. People can organize a band clash. Odyssey, you're the big band from St. James. Core, you're the big band from Gingerland. Ultimate, you're from Bath. You know, organize that. Everybody asks, what is the government going to do? And everybody's sitting back. And you know my difficulty, and I say this and end here, Ms. Budget, is that everybody asks what the government, there is an underlying sentiment when you ask that question, because when you say the government, now everybody says, fine, we now have to be paid. So even if we're having an event for free, and you say to the guys, come and play a half an hour set, fella's gonna say, $3,000, whatever the cost is, you have to pay. And I keep saying, we had an international show here some time ago, I can't remember, I think for Independence. And there was a young woman who reached out and asked, could she come and sing for free? She paid her own way, I think she's based in the States, and she wanted to come and sing for free. And I thought, well, what is that about? And what she wanted was the exposure. She wanted to be on a big stage. I think we had Taurus Riley and people like those. And so she paid her way to Nevis to sing. I think she did maybe 2 or 3 songs on stage. That's somebody who's investing in herself. And so I am calling on all the bands, all those who have talent. I don't have any, I can't play an instrument. But come and put away all the chatter. Every year you have the same set of noise about whether culture am good or bad and who doing this and who doing. Let's just come in the dance, as I say. Help us build the thing. But in so doing also, build your craft. You don't know who might have heard your band during Culture Am and decide, wow, I'm having an event someplace and I want that band to come and be a part of it. Right? Build something. There's no reason, going back to your comment about the village festivals, why the bands themselves can't have things in the villages over the course of the year. What is stopping Odyssey from having something there by the block there in Brick Hill? Squeeze Up Bar in Brick Hill. What is stopping them? What is stopping a band like Core from having something up at Market Shop? Nothing is stopping them. But they are all waiting for somebody to organize it, to pay them to come there. And I am simply saying that, yes, people need to organize and pay them, but they also need to take some initiative. And they also need to put out music. Let people hear the music. So that by the time Culture Armor come around, people want to get involved. Yeah? That to me is very important. So, my last word is to encourage them to get involved. Destiny proposal, will that be available to the media? The short answer is yes. And I have continued to say the same thing over and over, that the Destiny proposal has to be made public as a requirement of law, and it will be made public. It's simply a question of time, because the process is still ongoing. The federal government said they had some final issues. Those final issues were resolved. It's nearly a month now. But we had some snafus. The Honorable Attorney General lost his dad, as we know, and so he was unavailable. And then we gather various members of the federal government have taken a bit of a holiday, and so we haven't yet been able to get this back on track. But once that is done, it goes to the public, including, of course, the media. So that is a commitment that we've always made. It's not just a commitment, political commitment, it is required by law. So there's no issue there. What I've asked people, because some have whipped up this hysteria, we want the agreement, we want the agreement. And I've said, just be patient, because the agreement has gone through 30 plus iterations. And if, for example, we gave you version 15, and you stirred up all kinds of public discussion on version 15, and we're now at version 30, what is the value of version 15 to you? Because that version is no more. So we're trying to get to a finalized version that we can then share with the public, and then engage further with the public in relation to how we move forward. So the project is there, the proposal is there, and there is absolutely every intention to have that available. The question is just timing, and so we ask people to be patient. New candidates, that's certainly an issue for the party to consider in due course, and we'll see where that goes. If there are going to be new candidates, Ms. Budgeon, the media will know for sure. We'll invite you to the launch. And if there are no new candidates, we'll still invite you to the launch, so you will know that we've started our campaign. The broiler processing facility, that facility, we had a cessation of work there, but I'm advised by Ministers Brand and Evelyn, who are leading that project, that work should resume next week. So that's where we are on the broiler processing facility. We had some issues of supplies and some payment issues, but I'm advised that those are now resolved and that the work should resume in the coming week. Anything further for me?
I don't think that you gave the response to the airport project.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't note that one for some reason. On the airport project, we had some delays in relation to changing some aspects of the contracts on the construction. We had contemplated doing it as a single project, meaning the air side and the land side, the roads and all of those. We've now done it, decided to do it in two separate contracts. So we had to go back to the legal framework on that. That is now done. I'm told the finalized contracts were signed last week. And so we expect that now is about mobilization and actual construction. I don't have a timeline, but I would imagine very, very soon that we should start to see actual construction there at the airport, because everybody is now on board. Any further questions for me?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Glenbart Television Caribbean. Mr. Premier, for better or for worse, the Destiny development has become one of the most controversial developments on Nevis and perhaps in the Federation. And on that in mind, I want to ask two questions on that. First, given the current delay and the perusal that is being undertaken at the federal level, at this point, based on what you know, what are some of the key sticking points that is being addressed in the proposal that has been put before the committee? Secondly, given the recent emergence of how should I describe it, a Facebook discussion involving Mr. Jensen. He made some comments regarding old archaic laws of the Federation, but some of them have very deep cultural and spiritual significance within our people. And when such comments are made, it then raises the question as to whether or not there potentially could be serious flashpoints based on cultural and spiritual identity.
You're talking in circles, Mr. Bat, because I don't know spiritual and culture. What was the comment that was made that you want me to comment on?
Let me give you one example.
Yes, give me an example.
He indicated, for example, that the laws regarding witchcraft
Yes.
are outdated
Yes.
and needed to be changed. Now, the implication coming out of the discussion was that they need to have the freedom within their own space to
To
do what
practice
they want to do.
witchcraft, you think? That's what
Well,
you're saying?
I can't go down that road.
Well,
with
I'm
you.
just asking. You're
Right.
asking the question. So what do you think the
But
gentleman was saying?
implication is the implication that is there, and it is an important thing to address because you can't leave these things to fester and then they explode 10 years down the line.
Okay. Uh-huh.
All right? Okay. So that's the destiny
Yes.
situation. The other thing is, again, related to Culturama. You have addressed this matter previously, even this morning, but because we as a media entity have people calling us and asking us about this thing, I think we need to ask the question again. It regards payment. Some persons, vendors, service providers remain concerned over the length of time it takes for them to get paid because they are small entities, they have commitments to their staff and other commitments that they need to provide for. And so they need to know what is the mechanism that the government is going to put forward. And lastly, for this point, so not for this point, in relation to tourism, now, entities such as the Malcolm Gishard Park, even the water security program that you've had, airport redevelopment, geothermal geothermal development. Now, these are all infrastructural style developments that are necessary and essential for Nevis. What are some of the top non-infrastructure priorities that are currently being looked at for Nevisians in terms of ensuring that the development is sustainable in the long term?
Mr. Barr, thank you very much for your questions. You asked about you refer to Destiny Project as the most controversial development in the Federation. And I will concur with you, it has generated a tremendous amount of conversation. But I want you to, and I want the public not to see that as a bad thing. I believe in part it has generated conversation because there has been a lot of discussion, certainly from the governmental level, with the public about the project. There have been a lot of town hall engagements, a lot of public engagements on the project. I myself have spent an inordinate amount of time talking about this particular project. It is a far cry from other projects that we have had, whether it's Christopher Harbour, Four Seasons, Kittishan Hill, Ritz-Carlton, whatever. Not Ritz-Carlton. Yes, even the Ritz-Carlton, yes, that was proposed, that you really haven't had much engagement. And so the public has not been animated. The public has not really been engaged. So this, I think, is not a bad thing. I think it's actually a good thing because projects ought to be interrogated and projects ought to be looked into to determine whether they're good or bad for the country. So I have no difficulty at all with that. You use the term controversial. Whether it's controversial or not, what I say is that there's been tremendous level of discussion surrounding this project, which I believe is a good thing. You say cabinet delays at the federal level. Yes, there have been some delays. And what are the sticking points? I'm not really sure that there are any sticking points per se. I think that we've had a problem with timing. As I indicated, and I believe I said this in my last press conference here, that there was a meeting at the Four Seasons involving the stakeholders, including the technical people from Destiny. And as far as I know, the issues were resolved. The remaining issues were resolved. What intervened was then the tragic passing of the Attorney General's dad, and he was unavailable to guide the cabinet in relation to these matters. Some of them are legal and technical in nature, ensuring, for example, that this development complies with our constitution and that all of those constitutional safeguards are in place. So the guardrails are, in many respects, legal guardrails. So his absence would have prevented the cabinet in St. Kitts from concluding their deliberations on the matter. And thereafter, as I said, people took holiday. It's the summertime, so we understand that not as much happens during the summer. The last conversation I had with the Honorable Attorney General, he would have indicated that the cabinet resumes in September first week in September, and that this matter will be dealt with then. So we'll have to wait and see what the results are. But I can say that the concerns were really to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure that the project conforms entirely with the constitutional requirements of St. Kitts and Nevis. No project, no development is above the Constitution. And every project and every development has to comply with the supreme law of our country, which is the Constitution of 1983. So everything that is proposed has to be tested against that to determine whether or not it fails or it succeeds. If it falls outside, then it cannot happen. If it falls within, then it can happen. And even then, we have to discuss what safeguards would be in place. So that is the reason why there's been all this discussion and to-ing and fro-ing in relation to this particular project. You said that the matter, and that's why I asked you the question as to what was the implication that you propose one could arrive at. I saw a clip that was circulating where Mr. Jensen said that the reason why they were promoting this code, they wanted a specific legal code, was that some of the laws in St. Kitts and Nevis are outdated. And he referred as an example to our laws against witchcraft. And so by some process, I'm not quite sure, I would argue by some leap, some who are opposed to the project have said, you see, you want the laws against witchcraft removed because they want to practice witchcraft inside the development. And that, even though that's not what you said, that is the leap that some have made. I'm told one church pastor even played the clip in church to rile up his congregation that people are coming here to practice witchcraft. There is a possible other explanation that Mr. Jensen does see laws like that as archaic because that is not his culture, that is not, to your point. So me seeing something like, why do you have this in your law, is because I think that these things either they don't exist or they don't matter. They're not relevant to a modern society. A lot of this thing about obeah and witchcraft and all of that, sometimes when I hear people talk, I think they forget the origins of it. The origins of outlawing those activities did not come from us. They came from our slave masters. They came in an attempt to stop what the slave masters thought were practices that slaves were bringing from Africa. And so in a very odd way, when we go out there and we say, yes, these things need to be outlawed, we are perpetuating the very ideas that our slave masters introduced and inculcated in us, that these practices were somehow bad practices. We hear about voodoo and obeah, and once we mention those, everybody said these things are terrible things because that is where it comes from. It comes from centuries-old repression of any idea of what our forefathers from Africa would have brought. So we just need to be careful about that. I can't tell you what Mr. Jensen was talking about. That is not for me, that's for him. But when I listened to the clip, I figured he could have well have said, for example, if we had laws against homosexuality, that those are outdated. If we have laws against, I don't know, what else could we have laws against that's outdated? But laws against things that are not anymore material. Currently, we still have laws on the books dealing with this offense of buggery. And the courts have struck down those laws in other parts of the Caribbean and said that they are unconstitutional. So if I were to say that having a law against buggery on the books is archaic and outdated, does that mean that I'm a proponent of buggery? I'm merely making a factual statement that such a law is outdated. And in fact, the courts have now said that it is outdated because they have ruled it unconstitutional. So I just feel sometimes we have to be careful because there are people out there trying to whip up sentiment and play on people's emotions. And a lot of this debate about destiny, Mr. Bart, has been emotional. Because they have gone from, I heard a recent statement by the leader of NRP who said 9 square miles of Nevis will be in the hands of destiny. So that has gone from 6 to 9. Statements that they are erecting at, I think, a 20-foot wall, which will from outer space look like the Great Wall of China, around this development. People will not be able to bathe in the ocean. Fishermen will not be able to fish. And now it looks like they'll have a den of witchcraft inside the zone. All designed to create hysteria in the country. Nothing else. Because they're not talking about jobs. They're not talking about property development. They're not talking about infrastructural development. They're not talking about the fact that the government has mandated that Destiny must produce their own water, their own electricity, their own garbage disposal, and that burden, therefore, is taken off of the taxpayers. As great as the Four Seasons Resort has been for Nevis, and it has brought tremendous benefits to Nevis. When, in a season like this, a dry season, in bygone years, before we had invested in water in Nevis, and Four Seasons asking for water, some other parts of the island have to shut down. Because when we negotiated with them then, we didn't mandate that they had to provide any of these utilities for themselves. Now we're saying we learned those lessons, and all of these things are now there. So I am trying to get, in relation to whether it's Destiny or any other discussion, a discussion that's based on fact and less on emotion. You have a lot of people out there, Mr. Bart, who are making the most noise. One woman, whom I know, was in discussions to sell land for this development. But then they changed the boundaries of the area that they wanted to focus on. And her land that she was in discussions to sell fell outside the new boundaries. And I see she all over social media cussing, saying it's a bad development. But she didn't know it was a bad development when she wanted to sell her land. She only recognized it was after they said, we no longer need your land because it's now outside the boundaries. There's one fellow who's making a ton of noise, but what he's not telling the public is that the land that is there, he has no title for the land. The land is family land. He can't sell the land even if he wanted to. So he cannot sell the land, but he's making the most noise. He will not be selling his land by not telling the people he cannot sell the land. Another fellow making some noise, but he hasn't said to the people that what he asked for is for all his money up front, and that he doesn't want a deposit and then the balance. And because he can't get all of it up front, he calls me and he rages at me and says I should tell them to give him all his money one time. How am I involved in that? We have to be prudent. We have the leader of NRP, who along with others have sold and made significant lands available in the area. They turn around and march against the very development that they're facilitating. Because if you don't sell your land, Mr. Bart, the development cannot happen. You can't build the development in the air. So people have to sell land, and then the land is used for the basis of the development. And let us remember, because one of the things that has interested me about this whole Destiny thing, you're not hearing very much from the landowners in the area now. Everybody who's making noise, well, I would say 99.9% of them who making noise don't have any land in that area. They have land elsewhere, perhaps. Many of them are living abroad and don't have anything here. Some of them are expatriates. In fact, one gentleman said he visited Nevis and he quite liked Nevis. And that is his qualification for telling Nevisians what to do about their development. He visited and he quite likes Nevis. So the next time I go to America and I visit, I should write to Donald Trump and tell him, I believe that you're doing something that I fundamentally disagree with, and you should take my opinion on board. That is the level that we have had in some respects. So it is not to suggest that these voices ought not to be listened to, but in my view, the majority of them are trying to play on people's emotions rather than a dispassionate, objective analysis of whether a project is good or bad. It may well be that on the fullest of analyses, people conclude, well, Nevis doesn't need that many jobs or that level of development or that pace of development. The island doesn't want it. But at least let us have a debate that is not emotional. And when we start to talk about witchcraft and obeah, and we're getting into areas which, in my opinion, dare I say, are archaic and unfit for modern societies to have that discussion where we are assuming that people, because they say this is an old-time thing, that means they're in favor of it. The two things don't necessarily go together at all. So I would just like to point that out. Going back to the owners of land in the area, there are over 400 owners, I'm told, and I haven't heard anything from them. I would really like to hear, because the majority, I'm told, have signed up, have taken deposits. Some have taken further deposits, and they're all ready to go, because many of them do not see that area being developed in their lifetimes. And so rather than holding on to lands which they do not see as developable lands, they prefer to sell those lands, realize the monies, and I'm told that in every case, the value that is being paid is above market value. But realize those lands, get their monies, and do something else with it. Buy lands elsewhere, build a house elsewhere, educate their children, whatever it is that they want to do. That is their right. That is the beauty of land ownership, and that is the benefits that accrue to them. So I am, as I said, trying to avoid the noise and just really hope that we could, when this agreement is made public, have a debate about the merits of the agreement rather than a lot of the nonsense that has been constructed that is simply not true. You asked me about culture, armor, and payments. I don't know that I could answer you because, as I've always said, much of what we do as a government depends on our cash flow. So you will find, and it has always been so, you will find that some years, because the cash flow is good, vendors are paid off very quickly. Other years, because the cash flow is a little slow, we really go beyond December, but vendors are paid. And I want to make the point that even though vendors are not paid all of their money, we always make a point of making sure that vendors are paid. Meaning, you may be owed $50,000. You may not get the $50,000 in a single check, but you get 15, 10, etc. So we always make sure that people are paid something periodically, even if we're not in a position to pay all at once. Bear in mind as well, Mr. Bart, that some of the bills we see for culture armor are staggering. It's not unusual to see bills of $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 for culture armor. So we continue to say to our vendors, please work with us. There's no reluctance to pay. It's just a question sometimes of how quickly we can pay. And I will add this, because I have asked around the region, and even in our sister St. Kitts, there's a similar phenomenon. So people act as if in Nevis the government isn't paying or the government doesn't want to pay. But it's a similar phenomenon even in St. Kitts, that there's some lag time between when the service is performed and when payments are made. What we try to do in Nevis, I want to reiterate, is that we pay some as we go. So nobody can say for 6 months I haven't received anything. You will receive it, sometimes piece, hawks and herrings as we say, but you will receive it. You mentioned infrastructural projects that we are underway, and you asked what are we doing, if I'm understanding you correct, really to develop our people. And I think the answer to that is that we are really trying to do so through education and more education. We are trying to encourage our youngsters to take advantage of scholarship opportunities. The government itself has, since I've been Premier, we have assisted well over 300 students to go off and study various disciplines. All of them are bonded, so we hope they'll come back and contribute here. One of the things that we negotiated, going back to the Destiny Project, was a scholarship fund of $1 million every year in perpetuity. Again, the idea behind that was to educate and train our people. I'm particularly concerned, Mr. Bart, that in this new world, we need to upskill and reskill our people, particularly in terms of technology. AI, digital tools, our people need to be reoriented in terms of that. And our education system, whether it's a formal system or we build alongside the formal system other programs, we really need our people at all ages to now understand this new world in which we live. I can't even say it's a world that's coming because the world is already here, but it's new world in which we live. So I think training, and more training is really the only way that I know that we can equip and build our people to take advantages of a new economy in Nevis. Anything further for me?
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning.
L.K. Hewlett, Department of Information. I'll try to keep the questions brief since Ms. Budgeon had her own little press conference there, right? I'd like to go for lunch at some point. Okay. The NRP claims to have built 375 homes in 6 years as opposed to 346 in 12 years under the CCM administration so far. Can you speak to that disparity if that claim is actually factual?
Compared to how many you said?
375 under NRP in 6 years, 346 in 12 years
Yes.
under CCM. That's the claim. Well, apparently all my questions today are political. The NRP leader, the Honorable Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, has once again threatened a lawsuit against you for defamation, I think it is. Have you been served as yet? On Friday last, NRP's newly launched candidate informed that his employment as a government worker had been terminated with immediate effect, and that termination letter was, I think, 3 pages long. I don't recall the individual claiming it was politically motivated. However, he did not say why he was terminated, and members of the public are shouting political victimization because he was launched for the NRP. As Minister of Human Resources, are you at liberty to shed any light on that termination? And those are my very few questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hewlett, the claim about the 375 homes, that was brought to my attention, and I'm not sure why there is a need for anybody to seek to embellish where the records can be checked. And so the information that I have available to me from the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation is that during the period that the NRP has been in office, or were in office, from 2006 until the middle of 2013, that they would have constructed 202 homes. In fact, the breakdown, if you're interested, is that they did 119 homes in Cherry Gardens. That's the major development that they did. They did 6 homes in a place called Grace Housing. They did 23 homes in Cotton Ground, 8 homes in Jessops, 28 homes in Harborview, and 18 homes in a place called Sugar Mill, for a total of 202 homes. I'm not sure where the 375 homes comes from. Maybe they had 375 planned, but certainly they did not deliver 375 homes. And I'm also not sure where the 6 years comes from, because by my tally, they were in office for nearly 7 years. They had 5, and then they had 18 null and void months, as we've called it politically. So they were there for a period of time, and that is what they did. I don't wish today to cast any aspersions. I think 202 people having a roof over their head is significant. And so I want to congratulate them for the role that they did. We picked up where we left off in 2013 as government, and the numbers that I have from the NIA's efforts, let me just tell you that we have currently done 349 homes, and we have sold some 319 lots of land. Because remember, the NHLDC builds homes, but we also provide land to individuals. And those lots have ranged in size from 5,000 square feet to 32,617 square feet. And we provide lots for different reasons, for housing as well as for those wanting to do commercial undertakings. So in the period that we've been back in office from 2013, we have done 349 homes and sold some 313 building plots of land. And we continue. We now have developments going on at Zion, and we hope very shortly to be able to announce the development at Ghana's, which we expect to be well over 100 lots that will be made available at Ghana's estate in the University Heights area. But those are just the figures. There is no politics to me in it, one way or the other. This is providing an opportunity for locals to own a piece of the rock. And that is all that we've been seeking to do. The NRP leader, yes, has sued. You asked if I've been served. Yes, I was served. And I'm a little disappointed because after all the hoopla, I would have thought that they would come with something that is at least arguable. But unfortunately, that is not the case. So they've come with a matter that I think is just an abuse of the court process, an effort to stymie conversation on what is clearly a situation which can be proven by the evidence. I have never come to the public to say things that I don't have evidence of and that I can't document. And the court of public opinion and the court of legal opinion will see an agreement for sale of land that is signed by Janice Daniel Hodge, the leader of NRP. The court of public opinion and the court of legal opinion will learn that the developers of Destiny have paid not just one deposit, but in April this year they paid a second deposit on those lands. And that second deposit is of particular interest to me, because if you recall, the first story that we got from the leader of the NRP was she sold no land. After, I suppose, she realized that her signature appears on documentation for the sale of land, she then came back and said she did not know what the lands were to be used for. That was argument number 2. Well, this thing, according to Mr. Barth, has been the most controversial thing for over a year now. But in April of this year, further deposits were paid. So did she know then what the lands were to be used for in April of this year? I'm not sure, Ms. Hewlett, why some people disturb the court. Perhaps, as I said, they want the conversation on it to be tempered. Because when you put matters in the court, when the press asks you a question, I can't talk about that, it's before the court. It's a very convenient argument that some public officers use. I recall that there was an election pending, and one fellow who was at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, where nearly $500,000 looked like it fell off the back of a truck. This stuff was documented in an audit. And when 2 members, Vance Emery of blessed memory and Sean Richards, spoke about it, the audit, the election was pending, the gentleman rushed to the court and said defamation. But guess what? In the fullness of time, the court ruled there was no defamation. The allegations were true. And you have to pay some costs to Mr. Richards and Mr. Emery. Politicians keep trying to use the court to quell public discussion. And the easiest thing in the world is to say, I can't discuss that because it's before the court. Well, I am armed with truth. I am armed with the facts, and I'm armed with the documentation. And I will be asking the court to give me indemnity costs and to make an example through costs so that politicians stop abusing the process of the court. The Destiny matter is a matter in public discussion. And you could not have agreed and signed an agreement to sell 25 acres of land, of which you are the trustee and executor, one of 2, and of which said land you are the beneficiary of 5 acres, and then come and say to the people of Nevis, who you are asking to repose trust and confidence in you, that you did not sell any land. And when that lie was exposed, you then moved to saying, I did not know what the lands were to be sold for. Assuming that the second is true, that she did not know what the lands were to be sold for, way back in October of 2004, but my understanding is the agreement was signed. The question that I would have now is why take any further deposit from these folks? Because if I'm opposed to something, first thing I would do when I found out, I say, oh, I saw you go, see your money back. And I don't want a thing else to do with you. One would expect that to be the natural reaction. Take back your money, and I don't want no more money from you. Me don't want nothing to do with you. But that has not happened. So that, I think, is going to be an interesting, and this is not the platform for the campaign, but the campaign will have some interesting information to be shared. You asked me about, lastly, NRP member terminated as Minister of Human Resources. I have seen the noise playing out, and I would want to say that this particular employee of the government has, as you put it, Ms. Hewlett, not said that he was victimized in any way. But having read what he has put out, he clearly is trying to encourage others to form that view. Now, if I say I was charged by the police and the police improperly charged me, I would have thought that the interrogation of my claim would start with the charges that have been laid. What were you charged with? Equally, if I say I was terminated from my job and I was improperly terminated, then the interrogation should start with, well, why were you terminated? And so when I heard the gentleman say that he received a 3-page termination letter, I looked anxiously to see, what did this letter say? Because to my mind, that's a logical starting point. The letter should contain the reasons for the termination. And so if you're coming to the public, seeking the public's support, you ought to be able to say to the public, these are the reasons that I was terminated. But I don't know if the letter has been lost. If Rat eat the letter, I don't know what has happened, because no letter has been shared with the public. The public has just been told, I've been terminated, and then the activists have gone crazy. Oh, this government is a wicked government. They terminate somebody because of politics. And that is exactly the result, I believe, that the NRP wanted to achieve. And I have said simply, if you are desirous of gaining the public trust, you cannot come to the people with some of the information. You must come with all of the information. You must come to the public and say, this is what happened. These are the reasons that they've given for my termination. And then we can interrogate whether or not, based on those reasons, you were properly terminated. What I can say, Ms. Hewlett, is that this government has not, and I repeat, has not terminated anyone as a result of their politics. There are some very, very strong opposition activists in this government. They're on social media engaging in all kinds of activity. I challenge the media to find one, not 2 or 3, one that has been terminated by this government. In fact, there are many who accuse this government of being unduly soft and accuse this government of allowing certain individuals to behave in a particular way. I am a firm believer in people's right to express themselves, but I do not take kindly to any suggestion that Mark Brantley, as the Premier of this island, has ever targeted or terminated anyone because of their politics, because there is no evidence to suggest that. I could go down a list in my mind of some who, if it were politics, would no longer be working in government. But they're still here. They're still here. And so in relation to this particular gentleman, my understanding, Ms. Hewlett, is that he has a long history of poor attendance and poor workplace conduct. I have seen a report that was dated in July of this year, And that report said that in just a 6-month period from February to July of this year, the young man had 8 unexcused absences, 10 sick days, 14 late arrivals, and 11 times he was out of the office without authorization in 6 months. Frequent lateness, frequent sick days, repeated unauthorized absences, failure to obtain supervisory approval for absences, and oftentimes, according to that report, when he left the office, he just did not come back. That's the record that's documented by the ministry. I hasten to say the young man did not work in my ministry. So this information is his supervisors have documented over a period of time. That's only 6 months from February to July. I'm also advised that on the 12th of September last year, he was given a suspension. I'm sorry, forgive me, a final warning since last year, September, because this has been ongoing behavior. And then on October 24th, he was given a suspension letter. That is October last year. He has been subjected to verbal counseling, check-ins by his supervisors, written warnings, and we have had intervention by his ministry, by the Human Resources Department, and by the Labor Department. Now I want to pause there because I want the public to recognize that this government does not lightly take the decision to terminate anybody. We are mindful that people have responsibilities. But this is an example of repeated and recurrent behavior that we sought to remedy, because the approach of this government is if somebody is late or not performing well, we don't just say they must go, we give ample opportunity. And so this has been an effort to ameliorate and an effort to encourage this worker to do what is right. The worker has not responded positively. But with all that, I believe that the termination letter would also have set out the circumstances surrounding a particular program called a Boys Mentorship Program. That is a program that was established by the ministry and a program administered through the Department of Gender Affairs since 2022, forgive me. And this particular worker was assigned to that program because this worker was the only male worker in the Gender Affairs Department. We did not know as government, the ministry did not know, that sometime around 7th March 2024, some 2 years after, this worker would have incorporated a private entity by the same name, which is owned by himself, called the Nevis Boys Mentorship Program Incorporated. So the ministry has the Nevis Boys Mentorship Program. As a worker for the government, he was assigned to coordinate that program. And 2 years later, unbeknown to the ministry, he incorporated something called the Nevis Boys Mentorship Program, Inc., which is a non-profit that's controlled by him. We then learned that certain funds were solicited from the public in the name of the Nevis Boys Mentorship Program. But members of the press, naturally you would recognize that there's some confusion. Is it the government program or is it this private non-profit? And to add to that confusion, the letterhead that was being used the government's Gender Affairs logo and use the images that would lead Joe Public to feel that they were dealing with the government program. We found out that donations were made. In fact, one donation amounted to some $4,700 by a company that made this donation to this program. All of this we found out not from the officer, but by happenstance. And naturally, when we found this out, the officer was called in and an investigation was started. That investigation took its course. And the officer was informed of the findings, and those findings in part made their way into the officer's letter of termination that set out not only the poor attendance and poor conduct at work, but this other issue, which in the opinion of those who advised on the matter amounted to gross misconduct. And so, speaking for myself, I do not know if the officer would have shared with the NRP the fact that there was an ongoing investigation at the time when the launch occurred. If he did not, well, that's a matter for them. But I take umbrage at the suggestion that my government would have targeted and terminated someone simply for their political persuasion or their political views. And if there is issue with what I've said today, then I believe that the young gentleman can put it to rest by publishing his letter of termination, showing all and sundry, including the people who support his quoting, why the government had no choice but to take the action that the government took. And so, whilst I've heard the noise and the claims and counterclaims, I think that I have a duty as the Premier of this island, as the head of the public service in Nevis, to make it pellucid to the public that there was and will never be any effort to victimize anyone in this government who works for this government simply because of politics. There are fundamental concerns of gross misconduct that would have attended the termination of this particular worker. And that is as much as I'm prepared to say. I will add just one final thing, because I guess there was also some confusion that this worker was not a civil servant. So this worker was not an appointed member of the civil service. They were what we call an NE worker in Nevis, and an established worker. So I just wanted to say that, because some have asked, why was the Public Service Commission not involved? The Public Service Commission is only involved if a worker is an established worker. Now, in relation to this second matter that I've alluded to, I am not yet sure where or how further that second matter will go, but I can tell you that as a result of the investigation undertaken by us, of which the gentleman was aware, we had no choice but to take the decisions that we took. I should lastly add that that entity that the gentleman would have formed, that private entity, also opened bank accounts, which were with a particular financial institution on the island. And the presumption is that donations that were made would have found their way into that entity's bank accounts. But that entity was substantially the same name as the government's entity, and that entity was using the government's logo for gender affairs, so that Joe Public certainly had no clue, and could have had no clue, that they were dealing with a private entity. I will add this, that we have in government a practice, members of the press, that when you do work for government outside ordinary hours, as many of these programs require, then you can claim in lieu days. So if, for example, this program required this gentleman to work on a Saturday or work at night, he could apply for an in lieu day. That is to say, I had to take up my personal time to do this, so I want the government to give me back the time. And I'm advised that this gentleman did apply for in lieu days and received in lieu days. In lieu days are only applicable where you are on government service during your personal time. Yet, when the investigation unfolded, the gentleman insisted that at all times he was working privately in the private pursuits of this entity that he had incorporated. So it begs a further question. Well, if you were working privately for this private entity, why did you request and receive from government in lieu days for your private activity? Either way, the implications, I think, were such that we could not move forward. The politics out there is what it is. People are going to say what they wish to say. But again, we come from a perspective of evidence. And no political cloak should shield any of us from behavior in government that leads to the conclusions that one ought to be terminated. And the language, I gather, that was utilized was termination for serious misconduct, termination for gross misconduct. And so that, to my mind, is a position. If it were different, then any of us could do something in government and then rush and start to shout hip hip hooray for a political party and then claim that we were victimized for our political views. We understand we live in a democracy and we will have different opinions and different political persuasions. We welcome that. That is part of the rich tapestry of Nevisian life. But it cannot be an excuse for behavior that is unbecoming and behavior that amounts to serious misconduct in the public service. And I want to make that pellucid. Thank you.
L.K. Hewlett on Department of Information again. Just as a follow-up, so the investigation, has that concluded? And will there be any criminal charges? And as you say, I think you said the findings were expressed to him. So was it that he knew the letter was likely to come, so he preempted it and went and launched, and then therefore here comes the noise of victimization? Also, it opens the door. I saw the conversation online where persons are saying he's not the only one. That kind of behavior is rampant throughout the service. And so therefore the timing of it is like only now y'all know he's a bad employee to fire him after he launches to run against the CCM party. Thank you.
Ms. Hewlett, I'll answer you this way, that we are aware that we have difficulties in the public service, but based on the 6-month report that I alluded to, and to show the number of absences and sick days and unexcused delays and late arrivals, etc., you realize that throughout what we did was to try to ameliorate. That's why we had all these interventions. That is the case with every public servant, because our posture is to give people an opportunity to fix what the problem is. Not to simply discard people, but to fix what the problem is. And I dare say, Ms. Hewlett, that had those been the only problems, we probably would have continued to try. But when this issue came, and I remind you that this issue, we learned about it by happenstance. It was a conversation that somebody was having with the donors of this $4,700 that we discovered that this money had been donated to this program. We said, well, we don't know anything about that. That is when the fact that there was a private entity with the same name, that came to the fore. That entity had bank accounts, we did not know a thing. There was no, based on the information provided by the ministry, no authorization, no permission, nothing of the nature. So it wasn't just an issue of the poor performance, which is clearly, to the root of your question, an important issue. It was, if you will, there was this further incident that then went to the very trust that the ministry could have. And therein lies the difficulty. And that is why I'm calling on all of our public servants really to conduct themselves responsibly and avoid engaging in activity that can lead to this. And Ms. Hewlett, the thing about us as politicians is we all understand that once we hold ourselves out, the level of scrutiny becomes even more. And so you're no longer just an ordinary citizen or an ordinary public servant. The level of scrutiny is going to become increasingly greater. And so, again, if it is that this candidate, who is now declared, wishes to continue to pretend that this was somehow political victimization, then I call on him to publish his letter of termination and let the public see. And let the Nevision public make a determination as to whether or not the findings, based on what is documented, were such as to rise to a level that this individual, not only in government, but in any organization, would be terminated. That really is the debate that I would like to invite, and I want our people to move away from this notion about people being terminated for their politics. Like I say, we have a plenty NRP activists in government. Plenty of them. We have never seen it fit or necessary to terminate anybody. Our record is there, and I believe anybody could assess that record. A lot of the allegations against my government about victimization, we say, where is it? Show us. Because there have been other instances where people have been told, don't come back to the office. We haven't suspended anybody. We haven't terminated anybody. There's nobody who's at home sitting down because of their politics. We have simply not done that. And while some have seen it as a weakness on my part, I actually pride myself that there's nobody out there who would claim that we have victimized them in any way, shape, or form. The only thing that I've asked of our public servants, please come to work and do your job. That's it. And it's no different here in this situation. Any other questions for me?
Mr. Premier, I had asked if the matter in terms of the donations and blah, blah, blah would be a matter that would go before the police.
I can't say what will happen at this point. I think that that will have to be a decision that is made by the ministry and the department as to whether, having terminated this worker, there is a need for anything further. I am advised that at least one donor that we're aware of has asked for their money back. That much I'm advised. I can't, beyond that, I can't go any further. Any other questions for me?
Good morning, good afternoon, sorry. Vernon Judge, the Observer. Mr. Premier, I want to pick up where you left just a while ago. You mentioned that the youngster was terminated for a lot of reasons, but I have been privy to the letter that everybody wants to be made public, and based on what I read in that letter, there was nothing mentioned about any investigations or anything to do with seeking funds on a private entity or anything like that. It was recorded that the youngster is mostly about his patterns in terms of his lateness, his sick days, and so on.
Could you tell me what the date on the letter you're talking about?
Give me a second. Let me
Yes,
see.
that'd be useful.
Wrong letter.
Well, no, just give me the date and I'll be able to advise you.
The 10th of July.
No, that is not the termination letter. That is not, that I gather, I've heard that that is in the public domain, but I'm told that that was a memo, internal memo, which looked at the poor performance of the particular employee. But that informed the termination, but that was not the termination letter. The termination letter, I believe, was dated the 19th of August. if I recall. So, as far as I'm aware, the only person who has received that termination letter would be the employee. So, I apologize, but what you're reading is not the termination letter. The termination letter would have set out the reasons for termination.
Understandable. Can you give us an update on the meeting that you had with Mr. Greg Norman concerning the luxury resort for over Indian Castle? Some weeks ago, you mentioned on the mark that the boundaries for Destiny has changed. Can you tell us why and how much land is in the possession of the developers at this present time? Last month, you mentioned about Destiny is funding the dialysis center at the Alexandra Hospital, and you said that when they ask you what you want for Nevis, you say dialysis, say a dialysis center. Why didn't you negotiate for the expansion of the hospital wing to finish when they ask you that question? Because they have already committed $50 million to the island in terms of the Alexandria Hospital and other infrastructures. Who will be controlling the funds generated from the use of the dialysis center? Which division have been trained or is about to go on training to be able to assist in the center? Last month, you mentioned about a meeting with Dr. Drew and the developers for Destiny. Can you tell us who were the persons that represent the Nevis Island administration? And the 4 things that Dr. Drew discussed at his last round table, were they part of the same 4 things that were discussed in the meeting? That's it for now.
Okay. So, Mr. George, thank you very much for your questions. You see, update on my meeting with Greg Norman. I don't know if I was misunderstood. My meeting with Greg Norman was actually some months ago. What I reported on, I hope I reported on, was that I had some meetings in the Cayman Islands where the proposed developers of that site, I would have engaged with them. I actually went to see some of the developments they've done there, including the Ritz-Carlton development, which was one of their developments. Those individuals will be coming here, I believe, next week, or within the next 2 weeks, certainly, the early part of September, in order to continue. They're bringing the full team down now to look at that project. But we're not at a point yet where we can make a substantive announcement, because all we've done is to have what we call an MOU, which is really just to give them a period of time to evaluate. They seem to be very interested in this. They're already spending some money in terms of their research, and they will have the team here within short order. So I will come back hopefully by my next press conference, God willing, and have something to tell you on that. You said the boundaries of Destiny have changed. That's an ongoing process, Mr. George. I think what happens is you set out and you say, I want this land is ideal for what I want to do. But then as people decide, well, I'm not going to sell or whatever, you adjust your boundaries accordingly. So that really has been what has happened. I think initially their target was 2,400 acres or something like that, but that of course would have come down from people who don't want to sell, but also come down from them simply changing their minds about where. I'll give you a good example. When they initially had their proposal, they included Indian Castle, all those government lands, and we told them no, that we were not prepared because we had other plans for those lands. So they would have had to shift the boundaries away from Indian Castle. Indian Castle alone is about 415 acres. So it just gives you an idea in terms of how that has shifted in relation to that. So that is the position. I don't have an actual acreage. I'd have to check to see where that is right now. I know negotiations were still ongoing with persons, but the last I was told, they had claimed they had, I think, up to you know what, I don't want to misspeak, but I think that a significant percentage of the lands that they were trying to target, they had agreements in relation to a significant percentage of those lands. The dialysis center, you said, why we didn't ask them to finish the hospital? Simply because the cost of that would have been significantly higher than the cost of the dialysis center. So the cost to finish the hospital, in terms of what it would cost to do that new wing, would have been higher than the cost of the dialysis center, and there wasn't the opportunity for them to spend that significant amount of money on that particular project. The $50 million that you speak of, that's money that we have negotiated on the assumption that the project moves forward. Then we have said to them, rather than building a hospital inside the zone, we want you to invest instead in the hospital here, so that the whole island benefits from that hospital, which they've agreed to. So they basically wanted to say, like, what could we do for you now, for the island now? And we said dialysis. That was the wisdom of the cabinet, Mr. George, that dialysis was a pressing need, something that we've talked about for years, but had not been able to implement. So this gave us an immediate pathway for implementation. Who will control the funds from the center? The center, Mr. George, belongs to the hospital, it belongs to the government. So it's not a question of it will be under our control. All that they've donated is the building, construction of the building. If you realize the building is on government property, right? It's on the hospital compound. They've donated the equipment. They're going to pay for the staff, and they're running for 2 years. That is the donation. But the dialysis center will be run by the NIA. Whatever funds it generates will be for the NIA, and it will be for the NIA after 2 years to figure out and budget for its continued operation. You say training of nurses. I imagine that's the question. Have we trained anybody yet? The answer is no, but certainly we're in the process of identifying individuals. We had to, because we wanted to start now to invest in nurses coming in from overseas, and so we have, as I've reported, the 3 nurses from the Philippines who are hemodialysis nurses. They're already on island. They're already here, and we expect that there'll be some cross-training and cross-pollination as they work with our nursing staff. I'm told that the nurse manager is a local, and that person's already in place as well. So we have what we need to start, and then we're going to talk about getting our people up to speed. You said Dr. Drew had a meeting with the developers. I don't think that's accurate. The meeting that I spoke to at Four Seasons, Dr. Drew was not involved. Who was involved in that meeting on behalf of the federal government was the Honorable Attorney General, Garth Wilkin. And then we had our legal advisor to the NIA, Helen Lewis, and Minister Spencer Brand, representing the Nevis cabinet. And then we had the representatives from Destiny. So they would have met. Now, I confess I did not listen to Dr. Drew's roundtable, but if he mentioned 4 issues, he also mentioned 4 issues when he wrote to me, and those were the 4 issues that were discussed, and I'm advised resolved at the meeting at Four Seasons. So that's what I would have reported the last time I came, that there was that meeting, those issues were resolved, and so at this point it is really an issue of just timing, and hopefully the cabinet in sync it's being able to move forward. The last question you posed was, I'm sorry, my note is not effective. What was the last question, Mr.? I missed it. I apologize. Sometimes my scribble, not even I could read my scribble. Oh, you asked who represented the NIA. So, I'm sorry, I answered that. The representative of the NIA was the legal advisor and Mr. Honorable Spencer Brand. Anything further for me?
Ms. Budgeon once more, and I only have 2 more questions, Mr. Premier. Can we get an update on the cleaning up of the derelict vehicles initiative, as a lot of old vehicles are still seen around the island? And is there any truth, and if there is, Can you share with us any details pertaining to the Four Seasons Resort Estate Homeowners Association filing a $100 million lawsuit against Nevis Peak Holding or Four Seasons Resort for allegations over the conditions, maintenance, and upkeep of the properties? With such a huge lawsuit, what could this mean for the resort and its employees? Thank you.
Okay. Great questions. Update on the derelict vehicles. I'm going to ask you to be patient with me on that. And the reason for that is that just yesterday, as we did a walkthrough in Brownhill, I asked Minister Janet Nisbet to provide an update. It's being done through the Ministry of Health, and I haven't got that yet. So I can contact you privately with that update, or I can come back on the next occasion. But I do apologize. We started, I think she mentioned to me that we have already had 12 containers of metal that was exported, but I do not know at this juncture where that program stands. I don't want to misspeak, but I agree with you on one thing. The island needs that cleaning up of derelict cars. They're all over the island. It needs to be dealt with. You asked, is there any truth? Yes, the Four Seasons, Cascade, which is the ownership group, and Nevis Peak Holdings, I gather, have been sued in a court in Delaware by the Homeowners Association here. And there's certain allegations about the upkeep of the property. I do not at this point see that having any effect on the hotel itself or the workers. I suspect that it is the homeowners' way of forcing the hotel to do some necessary upgrades and necessary upkeep. For example, I know one of the main points of contention is that since the gym burnt down, which was, I believe, in 2023, that it has not been rebuilt. And remember that the homeowners are claiming that they're paying fees and homeowners' dues, etc. And so they're paying all this with the expectation that the hotel will be maintained at a particular standard. And I've seen the plans for the new gym and new spa. They're absolutely fantastic, but they're also quite expensive in terms of the investment. I believe it's over $20 million. So Cascade has not yet spent that money, and the homeowners are arguing that it's taking too long. You need to spend the money, you need to bring the property up to scale. So this is the current state of play. The government has no role to play in that except to monitor. And of course, if something were to develop that is impacting the island in a negative way, then we would definitely get involved. At this stage, we have not yet formed a view whether we should intervene in any way in the proceedings in Delaware, whether as a watching brief or otherwise. So certainly we are in conversation with both sides at this point, with the homeowners and with Cascade, just to monitor where things are and what's happening. But we will be alert to protecting the interests of the people of Nevis. At this juncture, we see no threat to the workers of the Four Seasons at this point. I should say that the Four Seasons did put out a notice, I'm not sure if it has happened yet, that they will be closed for 1 week, and that has to do with some significant maintenance that they have to do at the resort. So that notice already went out. As I said, I'm not sure if the closure has already happened. If it has not, then it should happen very shortly. But that has gone out to workers, etc., and to the government. That 1 week closure has to do with some critical maintenance work that has to be undertaken at the hotel. So that's separate and apart and has nothing to do with the lawsuit. But the lawsuit is real. Filings have occurred, and I've had conversations with the general manager, with Cascade. They're based in Seattle. They're the ownership group. They're the group that represent Mr. Bill Gates. And I've had conversations with the homeowners as well in relation to this matter. So we are actively monitoring, although we do not think at this point there is any need for a decision to intervene in any way, shape, or form. We have to just accept that people have disputes, and when they have disputes, they go to court. That's what it's about. My interest is to ensure that the workers are not disadvantaged in any way, and we are alert to that, and definitely will be paying close attention to this. Anything further for me?
George, once again, can you give an update on the progress of the online gaming in terms of how many licenses have issued thus far, and how much money Nevis has gained from it? And a follow-up on the question about the broader facility earlier. Was it a fully funded project by the Taiwanese? And how much money is owed to the contractor that has caused the project to be halted for so long?
Okay, Mr. George, update on online gaming. I think, if my memory serves, we have about 9 licenses that have been issued, right? And I believe that the amount that we're getting for each license is just under $8,000. So your math is probably better than mine. But of course, that has nothing to do with, you know, the possibility of jobs being generated, companies incorporated as a result, because each licensee has to be a local registered international business company. So there will be some other benefits that you know, one would have to include if we're looking at the benefits. We are still in the early stages, but the anticipation is that this will grow and that it will grow rapidly. But I think at this point we're at 9, possibly 10, but I can recall 9. The boiler facility, it's a project that is partially funded through proceeds that we would have received from Taiwan, but also partially funded by taxpayers, by the NIA. And you say how much money is owed, why the project, it really had nothing to do with that. Payments have to be made at periodic intervals. There was a delay in making one of the periodic payments by the NIA, and as a result of that delay, there were knock-on delays. But having made that payment, we expected that construction would have resumed immediately, and that did not happen because of some delays by the contractors now on the other side. So we had a meeting, and I say we, the government, represented by Minister Brand and Minister Evelyn. They would have met with the contractors, I believe it was just last week, and that's why I was able to report that by next week the construction should resume. So that's as much as I could tell you at this point in time. Anything further for me, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. I want to thank all of you for being here. Mr. Bart for making the trip over from St. Kitts, and colleagues for being here with me. We hope to be back next month for another edition of our press conference. I want to thank you, and we look forward to engaging with the public as we go. Thank you very much.